Through the chair, that's correct. It must meet HUD eligible activity through the old neighborhood stabilization program, which is where the city of Taylor acquired this property quite a while ago. So yes, for the first 15 years, they can only sell it to an eligible activity that is related
Meets
to
the criteria.
After that, it would be unrestricted.
Could they sublease it?
Through the chair, they cannot sublease
They
it
cannot
during the
rent it
first
out.
15-year restrictive period.
Okay.
I have a question. Could you give us an example of some of the eligible, what would meet the eligible criteria for them to sell this to? It would have to be another nonprofit. Is that correct? Or no, not necessarily?
I'm
It would have to
sorry.
be another nonprofit, or could it be something else?
Through the chair, the way this was brought forward to this body, separate personnel, quite a while ago, is a substantial amendment. It is being used as a battered women's shelter where they teach new skill sets to battered women, and they do quite a bit of outreach. They go to shelters and teach new skills. So that's the activity that was approved, I believe, back in 2013, right before Mayor Solers took office through the previous administration. So for the first 15 years, it would be restricted to that activity. After that 15-year period, they could sell it to anyone. However, regardless when they sell it, the city would receive back all its federal investment into the.
Which would be roughly around $160,000.
Through the chair, correct, just under $160,000.
Okay.
That's the acquisition and all the rehabilitation that went in.
Okay, Councilman Remy?
And if they sell it early, it is in their clause somewhere they have to pay back. If they sell it early, if they were to sell it early, they would have to pay back any balances on it, or how would that work?
Through the chair, no matter when they sell it, they would just have to reimburse the city the federal investment into the property. As you guys are well aware, there was also many other investments, or a lot of private donors to this cause, as well as they've invested some of their own resources. So it's been, a lot of different, public, private, as well as their own resources.
Mr. Baum, do you happen to know where their location was prior to moving into this location?
Through the chair, their CEO, who's based in Taylor, and this is Terry Grell.
Okay.
I believe she didn't really have any office, but they've expanded. She was very instrumental in the first 2 vet houses that the city gave away. So they've grown their operation, and this property was purchased 2 administrations ago. And then I know they worked very closely with previous Mayor Lamrand, and they had a verbal agreement. And then as we took office, they just received their C of O last January of 2019, which, there's a lot of extensive rehabilitation done. It's a rather large structure. So basically now, once the C of O is there and there, and then we finally finalized the agreement.
And while they got their CFO in January, since then we've been paying their electricity, their water, their utilities.
Through the chair, yes, we have, although as of May, we got an opinion from our CFO that we should not be paying any 501c3, any of their utilities being in a public funded facility. So that is part of the $159,000 that they would repay, whatever the balance was, and then upon the closing, they would transfer all utilities into their organization's name.
Has there been basically an assessment on how much is that house worth now that all the stuff has been done? I mean, I'm ballparking 250 to 300,000.
Through the chair, I believe the home was just around 2,000 square feet, maybe a little larger. It's tough to say because when this all started, it was in very poor condition. There's been a lot of private donations. So I would say it's relatively around $200,000, I would guesstimate, the property is worth.
Okay. I guess this is my own personal opinion. I'm very happy with what they did. I've seen the work that they've done on at least one veteran houses. I was in that house when it was being redone. The Carpenters Union was there volunteering time. Home Depot was there fixing up the house on the grant that they got. Electrical Union, I saw that the pavement was all donated and stuff. My biggest thing is I would almost I would like to see that the city just rent it to them for a year, but they need to pay their utilities and cut their grass. That's why I'm not fond of selling this house for $1. I think if they don't like it and they choose to leave, you know, if we were to rent it, I think there's other nonprofits that would jump at the chance for an opportunity to possibly rent that for $1 a year or something like that, but that's just my own personal opinion. Go ahead.
Through the chair, this administration just wanted to follow through on the verbal agreement they had with the previous administration. You know, we have made sure that they've received their C of O. And the tough part about your recommendation too is that they've also invested some of their resources into the property as well. It hasn't been the most standard deal that I've ever worked on, but, you know, and there has been a lot of negotiations back and forth, but this is, and we did vet this through HUD, this agreement, and they were very much on board with the language and that it satisfies the needs of both parties.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Bezura?
my interpretation of the conveyance language is that they can't sell the first 15 years, or if they quit using it for their intended purpose, it reverts back to the city. You're saying that they can sell, because I'm reading the sentence that says, this restriction for not selling, assigning, or encumbering the property shall take effect when the property is transferred to grantee. That tells me they have no choice the first 15 years.
Through the chair, it'd have to be the exact activity that they're working
Oh,
on.
the
which-
exact activity.
Yeah, so basically, they're really, there's no other organization quite like theirs, so in essence, you're correct. Councilman Bezura does bring up a very valid point, that they change their use of the building would revert back to the city of Taylor. It has to be used for the NSP eligible activity that was brought forward in the substantial amendment in 2013.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
Councilman Moon?
How long has this been in process for, and what was the delay?
Through the chair, it's a great question. So it was acquired at the end of Mayor Preby's administration with the same NSP grant that brought us Pinewood, as well as the demolition of Taylor Center and the Bartlett School and the Pine School. So that was when we acquired the home. It was in very poor shape. There's a lot of rehabilitation needed for that property. So since the city procured a couple different contractors who started the rehabilitation work. And then upon Mayor Sellers taking office, there was a lot of private donations. There was a home, and I don't want to leave out any private donors because there were so many, but there was a Home Depot grant. There was Al's Asphalt, I believe, donated the driveway. Landscaping supply company over here on Brest Road did a lot of landscaping. So there's been a lot of private donation. The Carpenters Union, Electrical Union put in extensive work. It was an extensive rehab. And then from the last year, there's been tough negotiations. There's, you know, we're bringing this forward. It's been a lot of back and forth. HUD got involved as well in the negotiations. So yeah, that's taken quite a while.
And we've been paying the utilities for the most part since,
Yeah, through the chair,
They've been in there.
since the beginning of time, which really was our responsibility until they didn't move into the facility until January. So they've only been in there a little over, what, a year and a half, almost now. So, and we always intended to close this deal sooner, obviously, but that's how long the city has been on the hook with them in the building. Really, it was our responsibility all the way up until then, regardless.
I have one more question. Just to clarify, so the 15 years starts at the closing, which would be July 30th of 2020, right? It doesn't start back in 2013.
Through the chair, if approved tonight, the mayor could sign the purchase agreement. We intend to close prior to July 30th. But with title companies just reopening, we want to make sure there was enough room in the purchase agreement